Without expectations, labels, caught up in silly love fables. We'll see through the illusions of love to find the treasure in being forever friends.
Happy Sunday, guys. How are you? It is Sharla Kornegay coming live to you guys with another Forever Friends Academy Live episode. How are you guys doing? I hope everyone is having a wonderful weekend so far. Happy to be here with you guys as always. Again, hopefully I can get some of you guys come in here on this conversation with me. So let me do the usual, my introduction for anyone who might be new to my show. Again, my name is Sharla Kornegay. This is my show, Forever Friends Academy live episode. How are you guys doing? I am an author, a recording artist, creator of Interact Coaching and Forever Friends Academy, and this is my podcast after the same name, where we talk about all relationship topics. What I aim to do is hopefully let people believe in love again. Believe that you can have a love that can last a lifetime. I know there can be a lot of things that are out on social media, just in your everyday life, that can possibly make people not feel that just being successful at having a healthy relationship is almost near impossible. Some things that people might hear in the culture, but I hope to provide a space that can hopefully give you some principles that you can ground yourself in first and then apply it to your relationship so that you can see that God did give us principles, to be able to guide us in our relationship. So that's what I offer. So please, if you're new, welcome. And if you like anything that I say and you feel like, okay, this is something I want to hear more of, please do me a favor, like and subscribe to my channel, comment if you wish, and definitely spread the word for anybody who you feel, singles, couples alike. The things that we talk about and I introduce here goes towards any relationship dynamic. So it's not just intimate sense like marriages and long-term relationships, but familial relationships, co-working relationships. That's what I love about doing my podcast, is that I try to introduce the universal, fundamental, godly principles that you can apply just about in any area of your relationship. So that is enough about the podcast. If you are interested in my music, I am also a performing artist, a recording artist. I write my own music. And if you want to peruse any of my catalog, you can look me up on your streaming platform of choice or just on Google. When I'm on the stage, I go by Sharla K. That's Sharla K. And yeah, hopefully you'll find a song that you like. I'm working on some new music for you guys, so hopefully we'll get that to you by the end of the summer or the fall, but definitely be on the lookout. So that is enough about me, and let's get into tonight's episode. And let me say some highs. I see some wonderful people who I love in here. Miss Mary, I don't know if you're still here, but thank you for popping in. Absolutely, always love you. And Emily, beautiful Emily, how are you, darling? I hope you are having a wonderful, wonderful day. So I wanted to do a part 2. So let's talk about, it's going to be a part 2 from our conversation on Thursday, because I just thought, one, it's such a layered conversation that I think one conversation doesn't do it justice. And then when I got off of the podcast, I had received some good feedback. Somebody said, because I think on one of my platforms, because I go live on Facebook, IG, and Twitch, and some other platform, and YouTube, of course. And I believe on Facebook I put the question, I titled it a little bit different from when I was on IG, but the way that I titled it was basically, is the goal in marriage, which will be the question for tonight, a continuation of that question. So the question is the goal in marriage to strive for equal partnership or to become one? Is the goal in marriage to strive for equal partnership or to become one? And then when I got off the episode, like I said, I received some feedback, and one person said, I think that is a profound question that you asked. And I said to her, I agree. That's why I wanted to, bring it up on the podcast and kind of talk about it more in depthly, right? Oh, Emily says I'm good. Oh, good for you. She learned something new today. That's great. She said, I learned how to fill up a gas tank. Oh, very good. You're definitely going to need to know how to do that to drive, right? So that's awesome. That's very good. Just the fact that I'm talking to someone who learned something new today is great, because I think sometimes we forget about that as you do your routines in life. I sometimes forget about learning new things. So that's great, Emily. I'm glad you're doing good. So, as I stated before, so the question of tonight, and then I will pop out and present to you guys the quote for tonight. But I'll state the question first, and then I'll give you the quote for tonight. So the question again is a continuation of the conversation that we started on Thursday, where we were talking about submission, whether we think the goal is to become either equal or one in marriage, particularly, but definitely relationships, right? Because you have to practice makes permanent. You have to grow, right? You don't just marriage is the starting line, not the end line, right? So there's hopefully there has been some routine, some behaviorism, some pattern behaviorisms that we take into our marriage that we can continue to use to elevate the relationship. So, in a nutshell, the question for tonight again is the goal in marriage to strive for equal partnership or to become one? And I said on the last podcast that I guess there's an underlying question. Second question in that is, and it would be, what's the difference, right? What is the difference between having an equal partnership versus becoming one in a relationship? Is there a difference? Is it one and the same, right? So feel free to answer the question from any of those angles. And my quote for tonight is, which a quote that I'm sure that you guys have heard many people say. I always usually try to find, the author of quotes that I didn't particularly come up with, but I guess this one I kind of did. The first half I didn't, and then I just extended it. So you let me know if you wish to, where you've heard this quote from. So the quote goes like this. Relationships are never 50-50. They are always 100%. However, that 100 does not mean that it will look the same because the people play different positions. So let me say it again. Relationships are never 50-50. They are always 100. However, that 100% will look different. It will not always look the same because the people play different positions. So let me know, as per usual, first of all, do you think there are some truthful principles in that quote that I just shared with you? Do you think it is something that you could apply to your relationship, whatever relationship dynamic that you're in, and that it would be a gem of wisdom, good advice that will allow you to have a relationship, that will cultivate continual growth, healthy, successful relationship, long-lasting relationship, etc., etc. All right? So let me know what your thoughts are. All right? I'll say the question and the quote one more time, and you can let me know what your thoughts are on it. And then, of course, I will share with you what my thoughts are. So the question of tonight is a continuation of our conversation last Thursday. And the question is the goal in marriage to strive for equal partnership or to become one? And if you want to answer the second part to that question, is there a difference? Is equal partnership and becoming one the same thing? Or is there a difference? And the quote for tonight is, relationships are never 50-50. It is always 100%. However, that 100% will not look the same because the people play different positions. Let me know what your thoughts are. Let me know what your thoughts are. So, as I said, this is a continuation of the conversation we were having this past Thursday, which at the end, well, not even at the end, really to the middle, all the way into the end, I had some people come in, and boy, they were dropping, at least in my opinion, a lot of gems when it came to this conversation. And I tied in the conversation this question that I'm asking you guys, and we kind of talked about submission and what submission is and how it affords or helps to basically create an environment where the people can become one, instead of focusing on, having an equal partnership. So let me know what your thoughts on. I will share mine until, of course, I get some of your responses back, and I will gladly stop and, share your answers with everybody else who is also watching the episode. So what well, first of all, let me talk about the quote. I absolutely love the quote. I've heard it, I'm sure you've heard it many, many times before, where people are like, relationships are not 50-50. It is 100-100, right? Those two people who come into the relationship have to give their 100%, because that's what it takes, right? It beyond relationships, just life principle overall. Whatever you're doing, and if you want to be excellent at it, you have to give your 100%. You have to give everything to it, because if you don't, then you kind of, at least I know for me, if I'm not giving my 100% in something, then I walk away with having the doubt that, man, if I would have only, actually pushed myself, or strived to be the best at what I was doing, then, maybe I could have reached, higher heights with it. And if I'm not giving my 100%, then I'll feel like, okay, man, maybe I kind of dropped the ball on that. So I think it applies overall, not just in relationships, but definitely in relationships. You want to know that it just takes that, especially if you're going to have a relationship that is going to blossom from a friendship then into a lifelong, right, marriage. You're going to have to put your 100% in for it to work. But what I particularly love, and the little addendum that I put to that quote that I've heard often, was the second part of it, that yes, it is 100%, that both people need to put into the relationship. However, that 100% is not going to look the same, because the people play different positions. And I used a couple of examples on our last podcast. I used the example of a husband and wife who is, starting their family, and they're, the wife is pregnant. Of course, the husband starts and initiates, right, planting the seed, and, choosing the child's gender and things like that. But then after that, the mother's life, right, shifts. Her body changes. Certain things she can't eat, certain things she can't do. Everything, basically. You're right. She sacrifices her life to give birth to this child. And the process, if you just kind of like, if you put it on a list and lay it out, what the husband does versus what, or the process for the husband versus the process for the wife, in no way would anybody say this looks like a balanced type of equal, process. And that's just because that's really, right, how relationships kind of are made up. They're complementary people, individuals that are coming together to make a whole unit, right? So it's not equal, but it is, right? Literally, that child is a manifestation of them becoming one. It is the reflection of the relationship, really, I think one of the ultimate reflections of those two people coming together and becoming one. And a more simpler one out of the context of relationships that I thought of today. When I was in high school, I played basketball among other sports. I was very into sports. I know when I tell people that, they're like, "Really?" I'm like, yeah, I was. I played a lot of sports. I played basketball, softball. I played, honestly, every sport except for track. I played volleyball, softball, yeah, basketball. Yeah, pretty much. And they wanted me on the track team, but I did dance line as well in the band, and it kind of conflicted, so I chose dance over track. But they wanted me to do track because I was fast. But nonetheless, I played basketball in high school, right? And I, played enough on the JV team, and I guess was able to cultivate my skill enough to be able to get on the varsity team, right? Now there were girls that I thought were phenomenal, right? They were just like amazing on the court, point guard, forward, etc. So I was put on the team because, as I stated before, I was very fast, right? So maybe I didn't have some of the other school girl skills, like where she could just like shoot from anywhere, land the basket, etc. So they would put me in the game when there was like a tight game, and they wanted to overturn the ball. I had a very good ability to be fast and run and intercept, some of the passes that they would pass to the other girls, right? So that was my 100%. Right, that was my 100%. I'd go in the games when they needed me to do what I needed to do, overturn the ball, so that hopefully we'll get a chance, an opportunity at either winning the game or maybe making sure the points that we had were so ahead that there would be no way that the other team could catch up. Right, so that's my 100%. But the other girls on the team, like that were the starters, that was the starting point guard, starting forward, right? Their 100% look a lot different from mine. It looked a lot different because they had to be, on most of the time, unless, God forbid, there was an injury or maybe they fouled out or something like that. But they were on the court from the beginning to the end of the game, right? And they weren't just responsible for just overturning the ball. They were probably responsible for like shooting, making sure that they were guarding the person that there was their opponent from beginning to end. Now, they could be like, well, Sharla, all that Sharla has to do and the 100% that she gives is just so when she goes in, she just steals the ball, overturns it, and then, then she can kind of take a break and rest, right? And they would probably feel, if they were not understanding what their position is, right? What their position and what they have to do and what their capacity versus my capacity in this particular situation or scenario that we're in, right? So that's just an example outside of relationships, but I think it applies in that same way and I think that's why the conversation that we had, that we started on Thursday is so important, because I think this is what causes a lot of like small issues in relationships that then grow into bigger issues because that's not really understood. And I think when a person goes into a relationship, especially a relationship that they hope to grow into marriage, and if they are so focused on, okay, the goal is for us to strive for equal partnership. And if what that looks like to them is that we are going to make sure that the weight that I carry is the same as the weight that you carry, I think that's going to cause a problem. Number one, only because, well, not only because, but I would say one, because we've talked about that when you become one, and one is thinking more of we're a whole unit, right? A whole unit, just like when you reflect on your body has different, right, compartments, different, your organs, different systems, your nervous system, all the things that work together to sustain your one life. I always tell my clients to think of their relationship in that same way. You have, two individuals coming together to fulfill one purpose, right? And in that, they're not going to always, they're not, not even always, they're not playing the same position because it's complementary, right? We're complementary to each other. And you need that because if you were the same, in every type of capacity or type of way, then how do we strengthen weaknesses, or how do we see blind spots that you couldn't see by yourself without that person coming into play? And so that's why whenever I would hear people say that quote, like, it's definitely not 50-50, needs to be 100, but I think definitely put that addendum in that the 100 that you're talking about, even though those two people are putting 100% in, that 100% is not going to look the same, because those two individuals have different purpose positions that they play in the relationship. And as long as both of those people are coming into the relationship with an open and willing heart to say, okay, I'm coming into this thing with the aim and the intention to pour my all into what it is that I have to do, right? And my goal is to outserve you in the best way possible, right? And that's not a bad thing if two people come into a relationship and say, okay, we are going to outserve each other, right? It's not bad because we're not playing the same position. That means that we're going to be strong, in whatever position that we're playing, to the best of my ability. And then that leaves room to not necessarily look over at the other person and say, you're not doing what I'm doing. So that means that you're not pulling your weight. You understand what I'm saying in that way? So let me take a moment because I see some new people coming in. And I also see a comment from Emily that I want to read to you guys. Let's see what Emily said. Okay, Emily says, 50-50 relationships are hard because what if somebody isn't working as hard as somebody else in the relationship? Good statement and good question. It's kind of question and a statement, I feel like. Let me read it again for those who might be on the other platforms for you guys to hear. So, Timeless Emily said, 50-50 relationships are hard because what if somebody isn't working as hard as somebody else in the relationship? Good question. And I think, for a lot of people, I think that would be what would be the hardest challenge, even in what I'm saying, right? That even though people are going in and it's 100%, they play different positions, so that 100% might not look the same, right? And I think what's interesting about, particularly what Emily just said and what we're talking about overall is, right, how I guess someone listening to this would be like, how can I safeguard myself? Because what if my capacity and my 100%, looks a certain way, and that other person, no matter what I do, just feels like they're not holding their weight? What do I do in a situation like that? And I think that's what Emily's alluding to, even though she was saying more of like a 50-50. And I think what the hardest part of this is, and I think that's why I wanted to put us talking about submission into it and the importance of submission and what that really truly is, and how it actually, to the person who, especially women, I would say submission is our superpower, because before you submit to any, just thinking of it in a marriage sense, submitting to your husband, it is you actually, submitting to God. I just was listening to a little snippet of a podcast that someone was doing, and it was like a little short snippet because they were talking about, and I didn't see it because I didn't watch it. And let me say hi to Troy Vams and my brother. Hey, how are you, Andrew? Thank you. Shoot your shots. Thank you guys for coming in. Would love to get the male opinion on this. So if you're still here, I'll pop out the question that I put out tonight. And the question is, in marriage, is the goal to strive for equal partnership or to become one? That's the question. And the quote that I put out tonight is, relationships are never 50-50. They're always 100% that both people have to come in with. However, that 100% might look different because, not might, the 100% will look different because the two individuals play different positions, right? Have different positions in relationships. So feel free. Would love to, always love to hear the perspective from a man. So feel free to join in the conversation on that. But to piggyback and continue what I was the podcast that I was listening to, because I think it kind of goes into what Emily said. The podcast was talking about the opening of the Olympics, and I wasn't watching it, but I just found it interesting what he was talking about. And he basically said that in the opening of the Olympics that there was, I guess, a reenactment of, the dinner with Christ and the disciples before he gets crucified. And it was full of transgendered and LGBTQ people. And the person who was on the podcast was basically showing some of the reactions of people who saw it. And of course, some people, of course, of the Christian faith, were, did not feel that respected Christ and what they believed in and things like that. And some of them basically were texting and putting on social media that, we should do something about it. And respectfully, some of them said, I will not be watching the Olympics because there should be some honor and there should be some respect, and that it just wasn't it wasn't called for that to be done in that moment. And then there were some people that went on the other end, who, had some speech that wasn't filled with grace. I'll just put it that way. I don't want to repeat some of the things that they said, but he said that you shouldn't, respond in that way, because grace, we all need grace, right? And no matter where you look out in the world and how much of a good-hearted person, or you trying to live your best life for God, and though there are people who are not, it still doesn't matter because we're all falling under grace. And he read a scripture, and I wish I would have wrote down the actual scripture that he quoted, but I do remember the scripture that he quoted. And he said that basically in the scripture it talked about entrusting, right, yourself to the judge that judges justly, talking about God, right? That us as Christians, that's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to entrust ourselves, our lives, right, to the judge that judges justly. And I immediately thought about the conversation that we were having on Thursday, and I was like, if there is a description or a definition of what submission is, that's what it is, right? Because submission, as I said in the last podcast, it's trust, but it is also entrusting, right? When you trust someone or you trust something, that means you're entrusting, right? Either that person with a part of your life, or you're entrusting this process that you have to be in or go through, to know that when you're finished with the process, or as you are going through your life with this person, that you're going to end up in a better position than when you started, right? Whether it's learning character lessons, or your life physically unfolding in a better way, etc. And I think when it comes to that, that's where submission comes in, where it's a key component to building relationships that are true, that are really built on truth, that are authentic. And I think it will help a person not get into a situation like what Emily is saying, where it's like, okay, what if someone isn't working as hard as somebody in the relationship? Because the truth is, right, when you're in a relationship with someone, it is not your, what's the word I'm looking for? It's not necessarily your place to tell them, or you can measure capacity in a relationship as far as like seeing how consistent a person is, but you can't, you can, but the best way to kind of get results in a relationship in the way that you want is not to tell the person this is what you need to be doing or this is how hard you need to be working to get them to kind of I guess comply to you, especially in an intimate relationship. That's more so done by, and really outside of intimate relationship too, it's more so done when you are doing the work on yourself and you are giving opportunity for another person to be inspired to want to become a better individual or to increase their capacity. For example, I'll give you an example that's outside of an intimate relationship context where this applies, right? I do coaching outside of coming on live with you guys. I coach women, I coach couples, and my core is relationship coaching. However, it's very hard to deal with relationships because they are the fundamental building block of everything we do here without going into like life coaching, right? And going into other areas of the person's life. So while I have my private clientele and my individual clients, oftentimes we start to talk about the area of their health, right? And how they are managing that area, because if we want to start with improving our life, we do want to start with the one and only body that we're giving in this lifetime to navigate, our life with. So we start there, and somehow, because honestly, I will tell you the truth, I did not even think that I would not put me and a trainer in the same word, in the same phrase, in the same sentence together. But I'm a very active person. I've been working out since the age of 9, literally. Played lots of sports, so I'm very athletic, and I'm very active, and I've been able to, by the grace of God, thank God, my body, I thank God every day that my body can do the things that it does without any pain or suffering. So due to that, right, my own consistency in my own life, so I offered to some of my private clientele so that they can start and become more consistent with pouring into themselves and their health, to get up. I'll be their accountability partner, accountability coach. I call them in the mornings. We wake up very early in the morning. Well, it depends on who's listening, because some people wake up even earlier than that, but usually it's about between 4:30 to 5 a.m. in the morning. And I'll have, written out programs depending on the capacity of the individual, like where they are. Like, oh, I've never worked out a day in my life, right? That person will start off on a different level, right? Now they have a goal, right? And me as a coach, they have, our relationship is that they're coming to me to stretch their capacity, right? Or to be a person that is consistent, that will hold them accountable, right? So that's already a relationship dynamic that has a structure where they are literally opening themselves to me to say, Sharla, I want you to stretch me. This is why I hired you, right? I want you to help increase in this way. So with that, right, they've given me the authority to be able to do that in their life. But when we're coming into our intimate relationships, that's not necessarily right how it's definitely, as you're forming a friendship, how it goes. Maybe as you go into marriage, right, a woman marrying a man, right, who she's entrusting her life with him, from a biblical context, then you are giving him, right, saying, I am open to you, meaning I submit to you, covering me, protecting me, and things like that, and knowing that, okay, that person has to have a certain, right, authority in your life to be able to do that, because if not, you'll just resist, right? But just forming a friendship and trying to vet someone to see if they're a potential partner, you don't want to go in kind of, what's the word I'm looking for, putting out all of these things and saying that you're going to be the person who's going to tell them and let them know if they're working hard enough based on your expectations or your standards. No, you allow the friendship to blossom, and you see and you allow that person to show you who they are. And when they show you who they are, you believe them. So in that statement that Emily said when it comes to 50-50 relationships, which I think that statement that she said doesn't just apply to the 50-50, it applies to the 100%, 100%, right? Especially when you know that the 100% will not always look the same because they're going to play different positions. But one way that you can kind of I don't know if I want to call it safeguarding yourself, but I would say better than safeguarding yourself, aligning with the truth. One of the ways that you can align yourself with the truth is to not come with that type of, and I honestly think it's somewhat entitlement when a person comes in and says, these are my standards, these are my expectations, and lay it out, and this is what I expect for you to do. I'm not saying for you not to have your own principles that you live your life by. I've said it many times on my podcast, and we'll probably have to revisit that. I did a whole podcast on the difference between standards, expectations, and principles. All of those things can shift except for one. The principles, the universal truths, godly principles last through the test of time. Those are the things that we want to build our relationships on and really build our entire life on. Your expectations, I've seen so many people shift them. And they'll shift them even before the other person has required them to. They'll shift their expectations because there's a desire sometimes that they want that is greater because there's no truth that's anchoring them. So they'll shift their expectations for the moment, thinking that whatever however they manipulate them or change them will get them what they want. And I've also seen just life challenges shift a person's standards, right? We've all been through it when COVID came, right? We had a certain standard of living. All of that went out the window because life challenges come. So it's better to root yourself in certain fundamental principles. And then as you navigate a relationship, constantly kind of check in with yourself. Check in, meaning when I say check in with yourself, meaning those truths that you know, that you are willing to live and die for, that you know stand the test of time. Okay, how I'm governing myself in this relationship, how I am engaging with this person. Are we still, both aligned in those truths? Because if not, then we have to readjust. We have to make some adjustments so that we can both be in, right, the same space, living in the same way. So that's the way you can safeguard that, because yeah, you're right. How can, and here's the thing, right? If you don't go in with the understanding of how relationships are, like the infrastructure of a relationship is founded or grounded in, that it is a whole unit, right? We're not seeking equal partnership. We're seeking to become one, right? Let's take it again. I like doing this often, to take it out of an intimate relationship sense and putting it into other places in life where this all works, where you can see that it actually stands. And it's good because maybe when you're not on with me and we're not having these conversations, you might want to test something that you're thinking is a universal principle, and you are like, okay, how do I know? So I always say, test it, put it in other areas. So let's put it in a corporate sense, a business. Businesses, definitely, right? The way that they are laid out, the way that they're made up, whether you have a CEO, you have, a vice president, you have, administrative assistant, you have all these different compartments, right, that help a business to run, right? There's no equal partnership in that, right? Because the CEO, the president of the company is not equal to the vice president. The administrative assistant is not equal to the vice president, right? No, but all of these working parts come to make up whatever the vision of that business is, right? And when we have, as businesses, good businesses do, they'll have checkpoints. They will have meetings to make sure that we are still, right, functioning in a way where we are striving and going towards the whole vision of the company, right? So different compartments, different aspects and ways that people function in that business, but one vision, one product maybe that they are, I don't know, selling, or one service that they're providing. And everything that is done within the business is towards making sure that they provide either an exceptional service or an exceptional product. And it's the same way in a relationship. The administrative assistant did not do all the things that the president had to do or the founder of the business had to do in the business. However, she or he in their position can do their position at 100%, at their best possible, level that they could, their maximum potential that they can to be able to, provide this product or this service. So it's the same thing in that in a relationship. And you can know this to be true too, because I think one of the best things you can do, at least I feel, I have seen it afford my life in just in a great way, because there's something that my husband has said many times and definitely has helped me in processing how I make my choices, and how I kind of navigate life. And he always says when he is presented with a choice that he has to make or a process that he has to go through, he always says, I fast forward it. Like, I fast forward it to my 80-year-old self, and me in my rocking chair, like, am I going to be okay with this? Am I going to say that this is something that, I didn't regret, but did actually help build the legacy that I wanted to leave? And he does that in his young body self now, right? So that he doesn't have to wait until he gets 80 to now reflect on those things. But I say that to say that that's an example of what I was saying that I do at any time that I get a chance to, when I encounter someone who has lived a lot of life, right? And they might be someone who is now in their elder years, right? They would be considered someone who's elderly, and you even if you don't see them in person, you don't have access to talk to someone who has lived life and acquired a certain amount of experience. You can find, podcasts on YouTube, interviews. There's this podcast, and I forget the name now, but I love it. He actually goes around and literally that's all he does is asks older people, and I'm talking about like late 80s, 90s, about some of their regrets, about some of the things that they don't feel like. What would you tell your younger self not to worry about? He asks all of these, pertinent questions in life. And I love watching it because I get to hear what they say. And I always look for the consistency of what, each of them say. Like, what were the things that they really regretted? What were the things that they wish they would have focused on? And I apply it to my life now so that I, can learn from their experience. So if you have that, maybe some of you guys have grandparents, that would be great. Or just, like I said, if you don't have access to someone physically, I'll try when I come back. I will. I'll find the name of the podcast that I'm talking about, where he goes around and asks the questions, and maybe you can look at that. But that's one great way, to kind of hear some of, the principles that you can kind of pull and extract from someone and use it to apply in your life, so that you can kind of use it to guide your life now. I have always been a fan of learning from other people's experiences. One of the reasons why I come and do these lives is to pour out what I have either learned experientially or have heard and either seen other people experience, go through their experiences and extract those life principles out of it. So, again, relationships are not ever 50-50. They are 100%. However, that 100% will not look the same because they play different positions. And I think even though it might be challenging to do, especially if you've heard people oftentimes say, I gave my all, I gave my 100%, and it wasn't reciprocated, and I felt like I've been heartbroken or I got burnt out from it. If that's a person who is in real time telling you that, I think having extra conversation about it, because oftentimes when I've talked to many people who have been in situations like that, and when we kind of peel back the layers and peel back the onion of the dynamic of the relationship, there are so many things, so many signs, and so many places where they lacked submission, meaning that there were whispers that they heard, there was truth that they ignored, because maybe they were married to the potential of the relationship, or maybe they were married to a desire that they wanted, a certain outcome that they wished to experience or have. There's I don't think I've ever had an experience where one person, where I've asked them, well, did you hear a voice? Well, did you, was there something, some kind of sign, something that you might have dismissed in the process? And there's always something. There's always something. Like, I can go back in my life and reflect on many times where, I've been with Ben since I was a teenager. So not necessarily in relationships where I felt like someone, broke my heart or anything, but definitely times where either he was telling me a certain truth and I was just like, like, I'm not listening, or it came within myself and I said, I'm not listening, because I had a strong desire. So I dismissed the truth and put my own, right, either expectation, desire there, and it didn't afford me what I thought it was, So I think, unfortunately, when we hear statements like that and it's there aren't deeper conversations, or questions that will pull out some of why that relationship failed, rather than just seeing, maybe the ultimate, whether it was they got divorced or they are no longer with each other. There's no investigation to see what's going on, because just like it takes two people to build a healthy relationship, it takes two people too, to kind of break it down as well. And don't get me wrong, there couldn't be one individual who does the thing that is outright, whether it's like they cheated on their partner or, whatever it is, maybe there's the obvious thing. But trust me, when you usually dive deeper, you will see the parts where certain things, you can see the slow breaking down of the relationship. So I think the best way to go in to it is to avoid, I guess, a situation like what Emily is saying, is that, one, there's no trusting unless you ground it in truth first, right? That's number one. And then two, understanding that you really, 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 really do not ever lose when you are, right, in trusting that relationship, right, and putting it entrusted in God. You don't lose in that way. I have talked to many people, and I have had that experience many times over myself, where you think that something happened and that person in that moment might have seemed like they got over on you or did something that was deceptive towards you, that they only, caused your life to become better. Because when you are an earnest person who is grounded in the truth and hold on to and become very anchored in that truth, no matter what they do to you, it will fulfill its purpose. Just going back to the example I was given on the person who was talking on their podcast about the enactment, of the Last Supper, during the Olympics, and how he felt it was very disrespectful, or others. Actually, the person in the podcast, I mean, he felt it was disrespectful too, but he was commenting on others that commented on feeling like, why is it always that Christ is mocked and things like that, and it shouldn't be okay. And I was just thinking that, even with the Last Supper, and you see all the disciples, and then of course you see Christ in the center, and then Judas, who, right, is the disciple that betrays Christ, right? And you think like, oh man, and I can't imagine, right, to the degree, even though I've had situations where I felt like people have betrayed me and things like that, and people who are close to me, but I don't think I will ever know to that degree of feeling like you're being betrayed, knowing, not even feeling, knowing you're being betrayed, knowing you're about to lay down your life, to extend grace to those who will believe in you, who do believe in you, and those who will already either have rejected you and will reject you in the future. That I can't imagine how that would feel. But even, right, Judas's action still was a part, and still, right, was a part of the whole purpose, of Christ, fulfillment of his, right, crucifixion and his resurrection. And so I look at life like that, and I've seen it happen to me many times over, a lot simpler and not as weighted example as Christ. And Judas is, I had a friend, and I loosely call him a friend, but I will say someone that I grew up actually in church with, and he was going through a tough time, and we had a close unit where we would all hang out because we did go to church together and things like that. And I remember he was going through a tough time, and he said, he called me up one night, which was odd, and that should have been the first sign for me, because it was late at night, and I remember picking up, and he said to me, I'm going through a tough time. He had a court case in the morning, and he said, I need to present, $800 for this court case, or they're going to put me in jail. That's what he stated. And so I was just like, and at that point I knew. I don't think she was his wife at that time. I'm not even sure if they ever got married. I think they might have gotten married afterwards. But at that point, his girlfriend, who also had his child at that moment, and I just remember feeling like, oh man, I don't want him to, you know what I mean? Like, I don't want to go to jail. He just had a child and things like that. And I was working, I was saving up my money. And so I had a lot of money in the bank. So I was like, okay, I could give him $800. And he was like, I'll pay you back, definitely, et cetera, et cetera. And I remember before I was going to give it to him, I was trying to call Ben just to kind of, see what he would say, what advice he would give me. And I couldn't, get to Ben. And I remember the guy, he called me like a second and third time because I was trying to wait to hear, to see if Ben was going to get back to me, and he didn't. And so I just finally said, okay, I'll meet you. I remember meeting him and getting the money out and giving it to him and things like that. And, the story was he never gave that money back to me. It was definitely, I don't even know if he had a court case, y'all. It was definitely a deceitful type of action. And then what made it worse was that once I remember I finally getting in contact with Ben the next day in the morning, and he was like, and I remember I told him I had given the certain individual the money. He was like, why would you ever, why'd you ever do that? Like, I would have definitely told you, no, don't give him the money. He's like, yeah, he's a deceptive person. So, and I was like, okay, of course we were, a close group, and sometimes we still would be around each other. And I was just like, wow, he never said anything about it. And I was, the attitude that I had about it, was that I'm way too abundant to like think and, you know what I mean, contemplate on that. And don't get me wrong, at that moment when that occurred, the money that I took out to give him was money that I was saving up to go, because I had taken a break from my college. I was going to Rutgers University, didn't do so well the first year, and I was advised by a counselor to take a break, just kind of withdraw the classes so it doesn't hurt my GPA. And he didn't tell me that once you stop, that those people who gave you the money, like loans, they come knocking at your door right away. So I had to take some time, work, so that I can save up the money to, be able to go back into school, because I had to pay all that, what I owed, before I can go back in. So the money had a purpose. It's not like the money didn't have a purpose. I was saving it up to go back to college. So yeah, it was like, and he knew this. So I told him I was taking it out of that. So yeah, of course that hurt, but at the same time, it was just like, I'm abundant, and you know what? The revenge, I feel sorry for you. That still is my mentality, but it definitely was my mentality back then. It was like, I feel sorry for you if you do something against me, because I'm God's daughter. Like, what do you think? That's like, I have a heavenly Father, no difference from if you, and for me, I really latched onto that mentality because I didn't have my father. My father passed away when I was 7 years old. So for me, I made, basically, God was synonymous to, like, as if I had my physical father here. And for me, I know, especially know now, because I've seen my husband in that position as father, that there's nothing that a father will not do for their child, and, revenge was basically his. The revenge is up to my father. And so that's why I loved the scripture that I gave you guys earlier, that gentleman on his podcast gave, in saying that that's how you respond when there's an injustice you feel like is done against you, is that you put yourself and you entrust your life and yourself to the judge that judges justly, right? Because there are things in life that we can look out on, and we don't know all of the details, and or we can call it unfair, because we only are looking, with a glass that's kind of half full. We don't know all of it, but there's what happens here, but here is not the last stop, right? So we don't know. The best way, I would say, if I would to give advice to anyone, is to live a life that you would be proud of your legacy here, but also, if even if you don't believe, if there is a chance that there is something beyond this, that you would want to live a life where you're not, right? If this is not the final judgment, which I most definitely believe that it's not, because I'm a believer in Christ, but whatever we see here, it's not the end, right? So what we call unfair here, you don't know what's happening afterwards, So I would say that's the best way you can go into a relationship, knowing that, listen, if I'm grounded in the truth and I'm doing something that is reflective of, me pouring my all into something that I said that I am going to commit to, then there's no way that good is not going to come from it. I've always said on this podcast that every person who I met before starting my forever friendship with my husband, Ben. Any person who rejected me, any person who I felt did something to slight me, all they did was put me in the, right? No rejection, just redirection. All they did was redirect me to the right person. Right. And so that's a different mentality than coming into a relationship saying that I am going to put all of these stipulations that are based on my requirements and expectations, and I'm going to monitor that person to see if they fulfill it. One that thwarts the person's ability to show you beyond what your your capped understanding or your capped belief of what or how someone can love you. There's, one of the reasons out of many of why I started to do the coaching that I do, and I started to do them at my home, was because I was running into people who just truly did just because of the things that have happened to them in life, that their belief in love was like at an all-time low, and that they did not or could not fathom being in a relationship or being in a dynamic where someone could love them like they are their own body. Like maybe some mothers feel that experience when they give birth to a child, and it's like, oh my gosh, like I love you like you're my own body, And for me, I've always been grateful that I've been able to experience that. I didn't experience it from my parents per se, because my father passed away, at least physically. I felt it. Love is beyond space, distance, and time. So I did, and I still do feel like my father loved me in that way. There's just something that just, I don't know, is like an undeniable feeling and truth in my heart that he did love me that way. And then when I did meet his, my aunties and other side of the family, they also confirmed that for me. But I felt that even before meeting them. But not growing up with my mom and not having that experience, I'm always grateful that I'm able to experience it now with my husband. And I think that's even more of an anomaly because it's not, it's a love that you choose, right? It's not like a biological, right, where that child comes from that father and mother. So there's a biological tie already there, but a husband and wife, you're choosing that person. You're like, there's no biological tie there. So it's like I am voluntarily, choosing you every single day. And for me to say and to do things and to serve you in a way and to be sacrificial and sacrifice minded in this relationship, I think it's amazing. I don't think you get there striving for equal partnership in the relationship, because I think when there are shifts in the relationship and when there are natural ebb and flows, like they will be in a relationship, then when things change, that the other person or they might be looking like to each other like, well, you're not holding your weight, but not necessarily looking at either what the natural process of something is. Like I gave you the example of the woman, the wife, who her process in birthing a child versus the husband, right? Like the husband could be there 100%. He can come to every, doctor's appointment that she has. He can try to make her as comfortable as possible. He can give her all the food she craves. He can support, and his 100% will look like that in that way, but it will not look like hers. It will not be the same degree to what she has to go through, to her organs moving, to make space for this baby, to her, having, the understanding that this is out of her control and that this is a sacrificial process that she's in. But he still is showing up at his 100% of what he can do, right? So either if it's just a physiological thing or just a natural process of life that doesn't afford it to look completely equal, or maybe it's just another challenge of life. I've talked to couples where one partner gets hurt, right? They get hurt. Maybe they can't go to work like they used to. And then the other person is coming in. You know what I mean? And even though they're not working, they're trying to come and do 100% of whatever their capacity level that they can, but it's not going to look like the same as the other partner who's there, who has a certain, right, where their capacity hasn't changed that much because they weren't the one that got injured or laid off or et cetera. It's just that those are some of the challenges, right, that come into life, challenges that get thrown our way when we're in relationships. And so that's why I say that it's better. And I think that, you know, the goal is not to come into a relationship, especially a marriage, striving for equal partnership, but understanding that the goal is to become one, is to become one unit. And I think, you know, we're in a cultural shift, and unfortunately, there have been many things that have been brought into relationships where there's more of a divide, you know, than there is a togetherness, and a togetherness that produces an understanding that we are one unit, and that us coming together is for collective growth, for collective vision, which is better than, you know, whatever individually we could have done by ourselves. So I agree with the quote tonight that relationships are never 50-50. They are 100 and 100% that each individual has to bring in. And I also agree that even though they're both giving 100, that 100% is not going to look the same always. And probably more often not look the same than not, because they play different positions. And the best thing you can do is focus on giving your 100% and ensuring and making sure that your first building block of trust that you, I guess the first building block that you place your trust in is to entrust, right, your process, your life in God's hands, and then have enough bravery and be anchored and grounded enough in it to then have the understanding that whoever you encounter in life, that you are now looking to see if those people are echoing, whether in their vocal speech as well as in their actions, echoing that truth that you know that you submit to in God. And once you find those people, whether it's your husband, you know, or other people, right? Like I said, I have clients who come to me as a coach because there are certain things that I have said to them that resonate with them deeply, and they've seen results in their life. So they put me in a position in their life to help them to grow, right? So they're already putting me in that position because something I have said echoes the truth that they're already anchored in. Right? So the people that you encounter, listen for that, and then be bold and brave enough to entrust that person with a part of your life. Because I don't think any of us go through this life without doing that in some type of way or space, you know. There have been many people, thank God, angels that I have met along the way that God has, you know, allowed me to entrust them with a certain part of my growth that has led me to become the person that I am today, you know, and that does take bravery, and it's such a necessary part of life that you don't want to pass on, because without that type of trusting, I always say it on my podcast that to have faith, you have to trust. And literally, when you have faith, it's literally exercising your trust. You know, that's literally what faith is. Faith is the exercising right, of your trust, in trusting your life in God's hands, in the process that you're in. And without that, it's very hard to experience the miracles in life. And I know that people don't use the word miracles often now, unfortunately. I just prayed today when I was eating my food. Like, God, thank you for the miracle that I could pick up this fork and put this food in my mouth. Thank you that I could cook it, without pain or suffering. Thank you that I have my taste. I know I have some people who, associates, friends that you've heard that they're still battling not having their tastes from having COVID, right? And then you realize how we take that for granted, and how it kind of just throws off a lot when you don't have that. So yeah, those are miracles every day. And I try to acknowledge them, take a moment, to acknowledge them when I can. So those are the everyday miracles. But then it also leaves room for the the miracles that are actually more like less and minor than the things that I've just brought up that we unfortunately take for granted oftentimes. But miracles, whether it's, I just had a couple who just got married, and they stepped out on faith, and was choosing where they were going to start their life and where they were going to live. And the place that they chose, neither of them had, jobs or positions yet in that area, but they had do their due diligence. They had, saved up a certain amount of money, but, it's still whoa, we're going to go there. Who's to say we're going to get positions within a certain amount of time? And they decided to, go there and drive. And then on the way, her husband gets an offer, for a position that, one, mind you, he had never even applied for it before. It was a very high up position for the industry that he's in. And do you know they gave him a certain amount, I'll say a six-figure amount, because he decided to live in a certain area that they knew, right, the cost of living was at a higher level. Whereas if he would have stayed where he was, he would have gotten paid less. And so that one act of faith that they decided to be one and act as a whole unit to do, even though very vulnerable, they decided to trust, right? The process that they're in. She had, as a wife, had to trust, right? The decision that her husband is making, as they are making together, and then they get to reap the benefits of what, right? That would be what someone would say is something miraculous, right? Because it's beyond logical. It's beyond, the mental math that we tend to do and our calculative nature, right? And so that's why it's important, because you want to leave room in your relationship to honor the daily miracles, and also leave room for God to pour in as much blessings, miraculous blessings as possible in your relationship, because you were able to submit, which means to trust, and be bold enough to entrust another individual, right, with your life, and I said on the last podcast, I know when I say that, some people are like, no, I'm not doing that. I'm not laying that down for someone. You're already doing it every single day. You are trusting people every single day. I say it all the time with the most simplest things, with the most, really, not just simplest things, essential things, right? The doctors you go to, the restaurants you go out to eat, the people, if you're not driving yourself, even if you are driving yourself, trusting that people aren't going to go AWOL and just drive into your car. We're trusting so much on so many levels. But I think the power in when you know, decide to, you know, go in together into a marriage, the power of it is that even though you're doing it every day, because it's such an intimate relationship, it does take, I think you acknowledge that laying down, you know, and relinquishing of your control and entrusting it into another person's hands. You're more cognitive of it, you know, and of course it's more intimate. So that person that, you know, if something goes wrong, then there's a risk that is really, really, really going to hurt, right? But all of that is necessary because of the type of relationship that you're doing it in, right? And the reward that you can extract from that. So it's all a part of the process. So, you know, what I would say is if you're single listening to this, if you're married listening to this, you know, don't definitely don't focus on your relationship being 50-50 because, well, that's half, right? That's 50% from you and 50%. And yeah, I guess at some point someone said, you know, if you do 50 and I do 50, we got 100% going. We've all figured it out now that that's not going to work for the very reasons that I just, you know, laid out in this long podcast, that life happens and first of all, we play two different positions. Then on top of that, life challenges happen. And thirdly, there are certain just natural processes that it just is not going to be that way, you know? So 100% in, both of you. But do not, you know, focus on looking over on the other end to your partner and say, are you doing your 100 right? I don't think you're doing your 100 right, you know? Don't go into it that way. If you're single, the best thing you can do is, like I said, practice, right? There's a way that you can practice submission. You practice submission, numero uno, one, investing, taking the time to learn what, right, those fundamental truths are, to learn the nature of God, to learn the nature of love, because then now all you have to do is when you go and you engage with other people, you listen and you look to see if that person is mirroring the nature of God, the nature of love, and echoing those things to you, right? Because then you have something that you're anchored in, and you can reflect back on, and always leave open room for that person to show themselves to you. Do not let your expectations or what you desire them to be override what they are showing you, or try to micromanage and put them into or create something more than what they are. You want that person. The best thing you can do is allow the chips to fall as they may, and let that person show you who they authentically, truly are. And if it is someone who lines up with those truths, then great. Let's keep it going. Let's grow this friendship and relationship. And if they're not, believe them when they tell you. You don't have to judge them or anything like that. You just know that you can, well, let me say this. I won't say like judge them, meaning like you don't have to, you know, in a demeaning way, but you can have sound judgment and say, okay, I'm only going to deal with this person in this way because I know I've measured the capacity of this relationship, and even though I desire it possibly for it to be something more, it's just the functionality, what it's showing me, it just can't, and it's okay. I surrender that because I know that no rejection, just redirection. I can go. God will lead me to who is for me, right? The just right people who are for me in my life. And if you're married, well, if you're a wife, I'm going to tell you, if you are in a relationship and you are hoping, praying that your husband will change, there will be no faster route than submission. I know it sounds like backwards, but it's the truth. Because, again, you're supposed to be one. And the way that the dynamic of the relationship is supposed to be is that he's supposed to submit to God. So you submit to him, right? And the beauty of it is that you're on the same team and you're one. So the messages that he's getting, you're also supposed to be getting. So submission is just one of those tools and resources that God used to make sure that the husband and the wife stay in alignment with each other and with him primarily. So that's one of the best ways that you can do it, because there's no better way to usher in positive change in a relationship than through honor, right? And submission is kind of like that. It's honor. It's not respect. Respect is earned, as people say. That's more of a thing that people say is earned, but honor is a different thing. That's why in the Bible it says, honor your mother and your father so your days may be long. God did not say respect, and he said it that way on purpose, because if he said respect, then people would think, oh, they got to earn it. That means they got to be, the best mom, the best dad for me to do it. No. Honor is something that you give regardless if that person is the best at it or not, because of the spiritual significance that person holds in your life. None of us would be here with our mothers and fathers. I did not grow up with my mom fully all the way through, and even throughout me growing up with her, she battled with her own illness, so she could not be there for me in the capacity that I would have, liked her to be, or me being a mom now, extending to my children how I am with them. But she will always have my honor, and my father will always have my honor, because I wouldn't be here without them, So I will always try to do and be the best daughter that I can be. Whether it's reflecting my father's legacy in the right light, because he's no longer here and I carry his genetic pool, or being there for my mom in the best way that I can. That she will allow me to be. So I think in that same sense, when you're in a marriage and you approach it that way, and you understand that, there's power in that, in honoring the person that you're with, even if you feel like they're not at their best, functioning at their best right now, but believing that as long as they're breathing and living, and God can change it, he can change it around. So I would say it's only, it's only produced the best experience that I can say I've had in my marriage. I've never lost faith in my husband through any of the things that life has brought our way. I just made it in my mind that I refuse to, and that has afforded a really wonderful experience, because my faith in him and it not wavering has inspired him and fueled him to try to give me the best life possible and give me as much love as he can. So, there's power. There's power in it. So, but thank you guys. And I think I missed someone come. DJ Q and J, thank you for joining. I don't know if you're still here, but I appreciate you popping in. So that's it for tonight, folks. I appreciate the conversation. Like I said, I just wanted to double back and kind of talk about it, because, again, submission can be a triggering word, especially for women, modern day women, right? And so I wanted to kind of introduce it in a way where we can kind of, understand it a little bit more. And I also wanted to, talk about how we can kind of approach our relationships and know that definitely when it comes to a marriage, it's not equal partnership. It's definitely, the goal is to become one. And the best way that we unite and have unity is unequal parts working together, not equal parts that are the same, doing the same things. And we're measuring it pound for pound. It's not really how any of our relationship dynamics here work. And I think that's such a beautiful thing, because when I go out into the world, I meet different people who are not like me, who are skilled at different things, who have different strengths and different weaknesses. It makes for a more enriching time here, and it allows me to learn more, so yeah. So that is all, folks, for tonight. I will be back Thursday evening at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Thank you for all of the beautiful faces that popped in today. Miss Mary, Emily, Sham God, Troy, Shoot Your Shot, Photos, G, Q, and J. And for all those that I missed. I try to name as much as I can. But for all of those who I missed out, thank you. Especially if you are a newcomer, thank you for popping in. If you liked anything that I said, please do like, subscribe, comment. If you feel like this is information that needs to be shared more people need to hear it, do me a favor. It only takes a moment of your time to do it. Join, subscribe to the channel, share the video. And definitely, if you have any other questions or comments, especially topics that you want me to cover, please do flood my feed in the comment section and let me know what they are, because I want to make sure that I'm, talking about things that is a concern of yours, because that's the only way that I meet needs. So please feel free to flood my feed and let me know what topics you're interested in. If you're interested in one-on-one coaching, if you're a couple and you want couple coaching, or a familial coaching, I also do too. So, just if you're on IG, link is in the bio. You can check all of the, it'll take you to all of my links. And I also have a membership group coaching subscription that you guys can check out, my Forever Friends Academy. We kind of talk about things that we do here, but I give them worksheet exercises. It's more in depth. So feel free, if you want that, and not necessarily the one-on-one coaching, feel free to check that out. I do have some snippets that you can kind of listen to or read, even if you're not a member, if you look at the site. And I also have a women-only group membership that does a workout program. So if you're a woman who's looking for, to get fit, definitely check that out also on my website, and you can join our group. We exercise pretty much 4 to 5 days a week, and we have a program that you can gradually increase to get stronger. All right, so I am off, folks. Have a good night, Emily. Thank you. You're always so beautiful. You stay, with me. Okay, she says, can you cover long distance relationships sometime? I absolutely will. Thank you for letting me know that. I definitely will do that, because I know that you just put it out there. So yes, that's a good conversation. That's a good topic, long distance relationships, for sure. All right, so I will be back Thursday, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Hopefully I'll have you with me too. And as you know, as I always like to say, always remember to live to love freely. Until next time, folks. Bye.